Hey guys, my name is Paige, and I have a really extraordinary family. The thing is that I have not one or even two, but actually four mothers. Are you surprised? Of course. Being the daughter of four mothers is very cool on the one hand, but on the other, it gives me a lot of trouble. Probably you want to know how it happened that I have four mothers. It all started many years ago when I got to an orphanage. My biological mother, Cassidy, gave birth to me too early, and unfortunately, she did not have the resources to support a child. And as for my biological father, after finding out about the fact that my mom was pregnant, he ran away and never came back. Then she made a terrible decision to put me in an orphanage. I hardly remember anything about my stay there because I was soon adopted by a woman, Elizabeth, who became my second mother. She lived in a big house together with her sisters, Martha and Piper. Martha and Piper fell in love with me so much that soon I began to call them mothers as I became very attached to them. This is how we all lived together and were very happy. However, when I was 10 years old, my life brought me an unexpected surprise. My biological mother, Cassidy, found me. To be honest, at first I didn't know how to treat her because, in fact, she left me in the orphanage and the other three mothers were not really friendly towards her. They were afraid that she would take me away from their close-knit family, but Cassidy didn't want to take me away, realizing that she had no right to do so. She just wanted to communicate with me and participate in my life. Over time, I got used to Cassidy and even started calling her mother, as she was doing a lot for me. Even Elizabeth, Martha, and Piper warmed up to her bit by bit, and we used to meet as a family and spend time all together. That's how I got as many as four mothers, each of whom loved me very much. But sometimes their love was excessive and obsessive. For example, they believed that I should go in for sports. So at the age of 11, they made me attend swimming lessons. Although from early childhood, I dreamed of becoming a ballerina. But all four mothers believed that ballet was not serious and it could not give me anything in this life. But swimming would make me strong and fit, as well as improve my stamina, so I had to engage in what I didn't like. They also loved to interfere with my personal life, which is why we often have fights. Once, Mother Elizabeth read my personal diary, from which she learned who I liked, what I wanted, and what bothered me. And just recently I wrote in it that the excessive attention of my parents was driving me crazy. Elizabeth told all the other mothers about this, and they harbored a grudge against me, believing that I did not appreciate them. For a whole week, they hadn't even spoken to me. To be honest, I felt uneasy because of this, and I did not want to hurt them. But on the other hand, they were themselves to blame for having read something that was not meant for their eyes. One way or another, the mothers were the first to come and make peace with me. Elizabeth was an astrologist and said that the stars and planets advised her to be more supportive and avoid any conflict this week. And the conflict seemed to be settled, but soon I again had to face a very serious quarrel that arose between the mothers. The thing is that I played guitar quite well, and I was admitted to a school rock band where I wanted to get into for a long time. But there was one problem. I didn't have my own electric guitar, and when I asked my mother for it, they refused to buy it for me for believing that rock band was some sort of trifle and that I should engage in something more serious. This statement made me really mad, but that evening, Mother Cassidy texted me and promised me an electric guitar. However, Elizabeth, Martha, and Piper were not supposed to know about this. Oh, I was in seventh heaven after getting that information. The next day, we chose a cool electric guitar, and I decided to keep it at Cassidy's house, but I couldn't hide it for a long time, as the other three mothers quickly exposed me. When the band had a rehearsal, I texted Elizabeth saying that I would stay at school longer than I was supposed to, as the swimming lesson had been delayed by an hour. And for some reason on that very day, she suddenly decided to pick me up from school. It was then that she found out that I was playing in a rock band instead of spending time swimming. Ho ho, what a fight broke out at home. The moms lashed out at Cassidy, saying that she did the wrong thing when she encouraged such a useless hobby. And Cassidy replied that I was already an adult and it was necessary to take my desires into consideration. All in all, this ended with the fact that the guitar was taken away from me and I was told to think more about my studies because my grades deteriorated significantly. I freaked out and said that I was tired of their total control. Elizabeth tried to calm down and comfort everyone else. Never mind, her zodiac sign is Sagittarius. It's okay that she gets angry. My mother assured me, but I replied that the stars were not the real problem, but because they did not let me do anything on my own and were constantly invading my personal space. Apparently, my words actually had a certain effect on them. My mothers promised that they would no longer interfere with my life that much, but they didn't manage to keep their promise for long because they found out by chance that I had a boyfriend. Recently, I was asked on a date by Eaton, who I really liked. But at first, I kept it a secret from my mother because they would probably overwhelm me with questions and would be against a relationship that, in their opinion, could interfere with my studies. Therefore, I expressed all my emotions in my new diary, which I kept in electronic form and protected with a password. How did I realize that one of my mothers had read it when I went on my first date? They were actually spying on us. I didn't even immediately realize that someone was watching us closely, but Eaton noticed it. He said that 4 women were following us the whole evening. It was easy to guess who was at our heels. Apparently, they were able to guess my diary password, and it all ended in scandal again. I reminded them of their promise, and they began eating my brain by talking about my studies and future career. Love at this age does not bring any positive outcomes, but just spoils everything, said Martha, who has devoted almost her entire life to a career. The rest of the mothers agreed with her, and then I told them a terrible thing which really hurt them. This is why none of you were married, I shouted and rushed to my room. They devoted their best years to me, while I was rude to them and probably hurt them. When I went downstairs, having cooled down a little, I noticed that the mothers were sitting at the table, quietly discussing something. They were all terribly upset, so I went to them, hugged each of them, and apologized for what I had said. The mothers said that they were not offended, but judging from how they looked, this was not really true. It was a real stress for all of us, which did not go unnoticed. The next morning, I had a fever that wouldn't go away. The moms were gripped by panic because when I was sick, all the previous times it did not go away without complications. For example, after a sore throat, I started having problems with my kidneys, which have only recently been cured. Their panic did not bring anything good because they began to argue with each other. Martha offered to buy good medicine, while Elizabeth wanted to heal me with herbs because it always helped her. Cassidy already wanted to call the doctor, and Piper was preparing some kind of magic broth for me, but because of their chaotic treatment, I felt worse and my body temperature was approaching a critical level. It got to the point that at night I was taken by ambulance to the hospital where I was on a drip all night. The doctor told my mother that I needed peace since my condition resulted from prolonged stress. Well, yes, lately I was really nervous because of my problems with my mothers and the upcoming swimming competition, and I was also very upset about the rock band. After these words, at home, they were overprotecting me. Not a single mother would leave me, even for a moment. They kept asking me what I needed and how I felt, constantly giving me numerous drugs and making me eat healthy food, even when I wasn't hungry. Oh, how I was tired of their keen attention. That's why, as soon as the fever disappeared, I ran away from home to take a walk and finally spent some time without my mothers. And in order not to get bored, I texted and ate. And in order not to get bored, I texted Eaton. I expected that I could have a good time with him, but that was not the case. Apparently, my body had not fully recovered since due to weakness. I almost fainted. Eaton offered to call my mother's, but I abruptly refused, which surprised him. But why? He asked, and then I told him how much I was fed up with them. Eaton just smiled sadly and said that I didn't understand anything, and he told me the story of his life. His parents were busy only with their careers, and he spent all his childhood with nannies. When he grew up, nothing changed. His parents thought only about work, and they remembered him only on special occasions, but even not always. He said that I did not appreciate the most precious thing I had, the boundless love of my parents. And his words sunk into my soul. I never thought about it. And there are many children who grow up without parents, while I have 4 mothers with whom I often fight. Now they probably feel restless because of worrying about me. After coming back home, I saw how happy they were and immediately rushed to hug me. I apologized to them and said that I was behaving like a fool. The mothers smiled and replied that they have been wrong as well and promised to correct this. Since then, we have tried to listen to each other. My mother has returned my guitar and no longer interfered with my personal life, while I tried to be a good student and win the first prize in swimming competitions. Do you get along with your parents? Give your answers in the comments. Click on the thumbs up button below the video and share it with your friends. Hi, my name is Kimberly, And recently, something very strange and wild started happening to me. The fact is that I was an ordinary child, exactly until I saw a dog with a bone. At that moment, it was as if some kind of click occurred in me. And soon you will find out what happened on that day that divided my life into before and after. I used to live like most children: school, vocal lessons, a dance studio, and friends. I was always the center of attention, and everyone admired my character. Friends said, "You were always so positive and cheerful. How do you manage it?" And I didn't understand why I should be sad. And thanks to my active life position, I easily became a leader in any company. I never thought that something could scare or unsettle me. After all, there should be common sense in everything. You should always stay under your belt. Moreover, I have a wonderful family. My dad is a successful lawyer, and my mother is a teacher at a dance school. I think that I am very lucky with my parents. We almost never fight and treat each other with love and understanding. My friends envy me in this too, because everything is completely different in their families. And no one could have thought that such a strong, successful, or cool girl like me could have problems. Serious problems that will turn her into a cornered beast and an outsider. Yes, if someone had told me about this a couple of years ago, I would have laughed loudly in his face. I will always be fine. I'm Kimberly. I thought. I guess I promised to tell you about that. Okay, I think it's time to start this. That month was completely crazy in terms of workload. I was preparing for serious exams at school and vocal lessons. I was told that I would have to perform at a city festival in front of main figures of the city, and in studio they told me to prepare for international competitions. Just imagine the level of tension I was in, but I couldn't give up. Otherwise, I would have stopped respecting myself, and therefore I gave my best 200% to keep up everywhere, and so in such an exhausted state, I went home. I didn't notice what was happening around me, who was passing by me, and I didn't have any thoughts in my head. I was just walking so that I could fall on my bed as soon as possible and probably fall asleep. Although it is possible. Just one lie down and go into the astral. Have you ever been so tired? When I approached the house, or rather was 100 meters away from it, something happened that no one expected. I looked at a dog that was gnawing on a bone, and then I took it away and began to gnaw on it myself. And at that moment, I was completely unaware of what was happening. It was something unconscious, like an instinct. I declare with full confidence that after committing that strange action, I did not control myself and did not understand what was happening at all. I came to my senses a little only when my neighbors, friends, and strangers gathered around me. They looked at me with crazy eyes, and no one even dared to ask anything. A smart girl, an athlete, an excellent student, a musician, a company leader, is sitting and gnawing on a bone that has just been stolen from a dog? How is this even possible? Fortunately, my friend Whitney saw this, and she did not lose her head. She took me by the arm and took me home. Only at home did I realize what I've done 5 minutes ago and was seized with horror. I became so scared as I have never been before. I was crying and shouting that I was losing my mind. It was about to become completely insane. I asked Whitney and my frightened parents to help me in some way and save me from the coming madness. Well, what else could I think of after such an outburst? I had no doubt that this was the end. Of course, my parents had no choice but to call an ambulance and give their consent to my hospitalization. At that moment, there were simply no other options, and I myself asked for it. At the time, I prayed only for one thing: not to go crazy. I even remembered and allowed something from the school curriculum like poems and formulas in algebra, physics, and even, oh my God, chemistry. In the hospital, after IVs and conversations with the doctor, they assured me that I would not go crazy and would not lose my mind. It's just that I had a nervous breakdown from stress, and that this happens even to strong people, so it's not related to any diseases. They asked me to take care of my nerves, and after a couple of days, they let me go home. I planned to reduce the load and treat myself a little more carefully than before to avoid this in the future, and everything was fine for a whole month and a half, exactly until my parents and I went to the zoo. As soon as we entered its territory, I caught sight of a dog who apparently worked there as a security dog. The key point was that it had a bone in its mouth, which it chewed with relish, ignoring numerous passerbys. Of course, it shouldn't have been so relaxed and calm, because as soon as I saw it, I immediately took the bone from it, sat down next to it, and began to gnaw it. Everything was exactly like the last time. It was as if an animal had been woken up in me, putting my mind and will go to sleep. I couldn't control myself. I didn't understand what was happening, and in general, it was like it wasn't me. And I was terribly scared again as soon as I came to my senses. What the hell was going on? Why did I act like a mad woman at the sight of a dog and a bone? My parents were no less shocked, and very quickly they took me away from there, away from the shocked dog and gawking onlookers. This time, I was sent to the hospital again, and already there, I had to work seriously with the doctors. It was necessary to find out the reason for this behavior and eliminate it, and to eliminate it as quickly as possible, because I had no desire to get into such an embarrassment again. Manic cravings for bones. What was all this about? And when the doctors took up my problem, they realized that the situation wasn't easy. Among their suggestions was the possible death of my dog, but I had never had any pets before. A hungry childhood, but our parents always lived in prosperity. Well, then head injuries, which I also didn't have. After all this, it was a dead end. In the meantime, as soon as I spoke or thought about bones, I was thrown into a fever and shiver. I began to salivate profusely and to have a slight clouding of my mind. And against the background of all of this, I wanted to gnaw a bone, and the realization of this secret desire in my head was shocking. I begged the doctors to help me deal with these painful bone cravings, and soon it was decided to put me into hypnosis so that the therapist could go to the depths of my subconscious and dig there. And what I saw in a trance state became a real nightmare for me. It was something incredible, as if from someone else's life, but not mine at all. And I saw this. I was in some strange place, a forest or a square. I was cold, but there were many wolves around me who snuggled up to me and warmed me with their warmth. There were a lot of them, and some of them brought me some food and bones. It was a very scary and unpleasant vision, and I ate their food and even warmed up. I played with them, gnawing on some bones. Just imagine this picture. I don't know how long I stayed there, but then some big man came and took me away from the dogs. That's all. I don't remember anything else. As soon as I came out of hypnosis, I felt so disgusting and sick to my heart that I began to cry. There was a feeling that I experienced the whole range of negative feelings at once. This has never happened to me. Cold, hunger, wolves, bones. That's just creepy. It took me a long time to cry out all the pain from that hypnosis session, and only then did I become ready for a dialogue with a psychotherapist. But he also had some questions for my parents. He asked me to tell them what I saw during the hypnosis, and then told them that this all really happened in my life, and asked them the question of when Kimberly was in a pack of wolves. My parents looked at each other in fright. Then my mother started crying and started talking. My mother told me that when I was 2 years old, she went for a walk with me to the city center. There, she became so interested in the performance of the street dancers that for a while she forgot about me. Rather, I was sitting in a baby carriage behind her, and when my mother remembered me, I was no longer there. I was nowhere. She was seized with horror and began to look for me and ask for help from others. But no one could help her, not even the police who arrived. It was a real blow for my family. They were looking for me all over the city, but no results. I seemed to have disappeared. Only one boy said that he saw some homeless woman taking me away, but there was no confirmation of his words. I was gone for 7 days, and it's hard to imagine what my parents felt at this time. And then they got a call and were told that I was found in the forest with wolves. It was like some kind of nightmare, and my parents were sure that since there was a dangerous predator, they would not find me or what was left of me. But no, it was me, alive and unharmed. Some hunter found me. He drove the wolves away from me, and when they ran away, he came closer and saw me smiling and gnawing on a bone. This picture shocked him very much, and he was even afraid to touch me, apparently thinking that I was a werewolf. I was saved, and my parents wanted me to forget about everything that had happened, so they swore to each other that I would never find out about it. But the circumstances were very different. And when they realized that the reason for my problems lies in my distant childhood, namely that I spent 7 days with wolves as a 2-year-old baby, my parents had no choice but to tell me everything. Honestly, I was a little shocked, but it seemed to me that this was not the information that should have been hidden from me. I was treated by a psychotherapist, and my condition returned to normal. I hope that there will be no more such references to my distant childhood in my life, and this will all remain in the past. Do you think my parents should have told me everything much earlier? Or did they do the right thing? Share your thoughts in the comments below this video. Don't forget to click on the thumbs up button and subscribe to our channel.
A group of friends are driving down the highway late at night. They're on their way home from a concert, and after the long night of dancing and partying, all of them are feeling quite tired. The radio is turned off, and after so much loud music, the silence is refreshing. No one is talking at all, and in fact, the driver notices that both his girlfriend sitting next to him as well as his friend in the back seat have fallen asleep. The driver tries to make sure that he doesn't do the same, as the car moves down the long stretch of straight, empty highway. The driver's eyes start to grow heavy though. He can feel the weight of sleep starting to press on him. He turns the radio on at a low volume, but that only staves off the drowsiness for a moment. He can't fight the approach of sleep any longer, and his eyes start to close. As he drifts off to sleep, his foot presses down slightly more on the accelerator. The driver's head slumps to the side as the car gains speed and begins to pull to the right where it crosses the white line marking the edge of the highway. The tyres dip off the road into the dirt, and the sudden change causes the driver to jerk back awake. He quickly swerves the car back onto the road. The sudden jolt causes both the passengers to wake up. Is everything okay? The driver tells them that he just swerved to avoid an animal in the road. That's right, nothing to be worried about. They can go back to sleep. As both of his friends close their eyes and try to go back to sleep, the driver spots something. Lights have appeared in his rearview mirror. It's a pair of headlights. He didn't notice a car pulling out or speeding up behind him, but he must have missed it when he was dozing off. His heart is still racing from when he drifted off the road, and he's trying to regain his composure. But it's about to get a whole lot harder, because when he looks in the mirror again, he sees that the telltale red and blue lights of a police cruiser have lit up behind him. Oh crap, oh no, the driver says out loud. Everyone is awake now and aware of the cop behind them. They grow nervous and start freaking out. Not all the activities they had partaken in at the concert were, strictly speaking, technically legal in this state. What do we do? The driver asks. You've got to pull over, says his girlfriend. The cop car sirens come on. This is serious. But then something strange happens. They hear a voice in the car coming over the radio. It's too quiet to hear, but when the driver turns up the volume, the message comes through loud and clear. It's a gruff voice that keeps repeating the same phrase over and over. You better run. How is this message coming over the radio? They don't know, but the passenger in the back seat agrees with the voice. They've got to try and run, and they have to get out of here. The driver's girlfriend is screaming to pull over. The cop car speeds up and is right behind them now, almost on their bumper, its lights flashing and sirens blaring. The driver doesn't know what to do. Should he pull over? Should he try and run? Everyone is yelling. He starts to push down on the accelerator, but then thinks better of it. There's no way this old car can outrun a cop. Finally, he makes the decision to brake and starts to pull the car to the side of the road. The police car comes to a stop behind him. The sirens are off, but the bright lights are almost blinding. They sit in the car and await their fate, but nothing happens. The car is just sitting there behind them. And after what feels like a long time, the door of the cop car finally opens. The three passengers watch silently as a highway patrol officer steps out and begins approaching their car. The driver tells everyone to relax, that this is going to be just fine. But the passenger in the back starts to panic. He can't get arrested. If he does, it will mean that he loses his scholarship. He'll get kicked out of school. His whole life will be over. The highway patrol office reaches the car. Despite it being late at night, he's wearing dark aviator sunglasses that cover half his face. He stands in front of the door to the car and waits. The driver, feeling nervous and afraid, rolls down his window. The police officer doesn't move or react though. He just keeps standing next to the car. Good evening, officer, the driver says. No response. The driver turns and looks at his girlfriend in the front seat, but all she can do is shrug. He turns back to the highway patrolman. Did we do something wrong? There's another long pause, but then the patrolman finally reacts. He bends down and leans in close, sticking his head practically through the open window and putting his tight-lipped face right next to the driver's. Do you want to see my license and registration? The driver asks. The patrolman doesn't respond. He reaches up and slowly grabs the side of his dark aviator sunglasses. He pulls them down, and the driver finds himself staring into a pair of bright red glowing eyes. Evil eyes. Everyone in the car starts to scream as the thing standing in front of them opens its mouth to reveal a big, black, gaping hole with no gums or teeth. A horrifying void in its face that screams right back at them. As you may have already deducted, this was no normal traffic stop, and certainly not a normal highway patrol officer. No, the entity that this group of young adults encountered that evening was one that dozens before them had the same misfortune of running into, and one that the SCP Foundation is actively trying to stop from engaging in its frightening and dangerous behavior. This is SCP-973. SCP-973 is not one, but actually two separate entities. The first, designated SCP-9731, is a police cruiser that appears to be a model similar to those used by actual state troopers during the early 1970s. And its condition is much like you would expect for a well-used, nearly 50-year-old vehicle, with much of it being in an advanced state of disrepair. Eyewitness accounts of SCP-9731 have described the police car as having numerous dents on the doors and hood, cracks in the windshield, multiple rust spots, and a rear bumper that looks to be held on with duct tape. The vehicle's driver and sole occupant has been designated SCP-9732. This humanoid figure has an appearance that resembles a Caucasian male in his late 40s. It is dressed in a state trooper uniform that, like 9731, also looks to have come from the early 1970s, and eyewitnesses have described him as being slightly overweight, balding, and sporting a handlebar mustache. Both the anomalous car and its driver will appear at night in a specific location along a particular US highway. It is unknown exactly what will cause SCP-973 to show up on the road, but Foundation researchers have hypothesized that its manifestation may be triggered when a vehicle accelerates over a certain speed. You may think that you're safe, that if you stay below a certain speed, but unfortunately, you'd be wrong. It's unknown exactly what speed limit infraction will lead to SCP-973's appearance, with reports ranging from 35 miles per hour all the way to 70. But when it does occur, the driver will find that they are now a target. SCP-973 will materialize roughly half a kilometer behind the targeted vehicle and will approach them at a high speed. SCP-9731's sirens will turn on and its lights will flash, as it also somehow broadcasts a message into the targeted car that is picked up on the car's radio, a message that urges the driver to run. In most cases, the targeted vehicle will abide by the instructions over the radio and begin to flee, though it's unlikely that this is due to any mimetic effect. Rather, it would seem that most run out of pure fear. SCP-973 will then pursue the targeted car, leading to a high-speed chase. No matter how fast the targeted car is, though, the SCP-9731 police cruiser will always be faster, and it typically takes no more than 6 minutes for them to be overtaken. SCP-973 seems to have no qualms about ramming into the fleeing car, which likely accounts for the extreme damage present on the patrol car. While it is unclear exactly what happens once 973 forces the targeted vehicle to stop, either through their own choice or by being rammed off the road, the results are always quite disturbing. The vehicle that fled will later be located somewhere near SCP-973's spawning location, usually within roughly 6 kilometers of the road. Whether the vehicles that are found that far from the road drove there in a panic or were somehow transported there by anomalous means isn't clear. What is clear is that the occupants of the cars met a truly grisly fate. Their bodies will show signs of extreme violence and assault, including evisceration, and some have been so badly maimed and mangled that visual identification was impossible. The vehicles themselves are badly damaged, showing signs of impacts from another vehicle, and severe burn damage is often present in the interior. So far, over 34 individuals and 19 vehicles have been designated as victims of SCP-973, though it is likely that the true number is much, much higher. Perhaps most terrifying of all is that some of the victims survived. The Foundation has recovered 5 individuals from sites of SCP-973 attacks, who in addition to their gruesome physical injuries also suffer from various levels of ongoing mental trauma. But why not just destroy the road that SCP-973 appears on, you ask? Well, the Foundation has had the same idea, and in 1983, the section of highway affected by SCP-973 was demolished in an attempt to stop it from manifesting. This attempt failed though. All this led to was SCP-973 changing its location, where it immediately began engaging in the same deadly behaviour. Numerous attempts have also been made to try and capture both 973-1 and 2. In one such event, several teams of SCP Foundation containment specialists were dispatched to its section of highway with the mission to subdue and contain the anomaly. After multiple attempts to get SCP-973 to appear by driving down the highway at various speeds, a car carrying several agents was finally successful, and they spotted the flashing red and blue lights of 973-1 behind them as the message telling them to run began playing over the radio. With no further warnings, the anomalous police car closed in on them even faster than the agents were expecting, and immediately began ramming into their car. A van filled with additional containment specialists was dispatched to the area to help, and when they reached the area that the GPS tracked on the pursued car led, they found that they were too late. SCP-973 had pushed the agent's car far off the road and was ruthlessly tearing their bodies apart. The arriving containment team immediately began firing on 973 in an attempt to save their fellow Foundation agents. The team's weapons appeared to cause some injuries to 973 too, showing that it is perhaps vulnerable to lasting damage, just like the 973-1 vehicle is. In a post-mission interview, one of the agents described SCP-973's new appearance. His eyes were red, and his mouth, it was just a black hole. No teeth, no tongue, just a hole. No other reports would come from this incident though, as this agent was the only survivor. SCP-973 killed the other 9 agents and fled the scene. While it is believed that the Foundation team was able to wound the anomalous creature, it was neither contained nor incapacitated in any real sense, and the next report of a 973 incident occurred just 9 days later. SCP-973's ability to seemingly appear at a new location and the difficulty it has shown in being contained has gotten it a well-earned Euclid classification. The roughly 60 kilometers of highway on which it is known to appear is under satellite surveillance at all times, and all traffic between 10 p.m. and 4:30 a.m. is diverted along a non-highway detour route, by force if necessary. Unfortunately for the SCP Foundation and the general highway using populace, these security protocols have necessitated frequent updates, because while the area that SCP-973 engages in its predatory behavior on is well known, both the time of day during which it appears and the area it seems to affect are expanding.